Hi, everybody. My name is Ruchira Nasir, and I'm part of Group A. And our theme for Group A is representing objects. And the specific topic that I want to talk about, in case you can tell from my title, is about olfactory objects. Now, olfactory is basically a fancy way of referring to the sense of your smell. I specifically wanted to look into how smells can represent objects in the form of memories. So I got interested in this topic through reading the book, The Objects of Experience, Transforming Visitor Object Encounters in Museums by Elizabeth Wood and Kirsten F. Latham. This was provided by Terry, of course. Chapter 3, Object as Identity, is the chapter that I studied. And this is the quote that really intrigued me. When people use or touch an object, they feel they can move freely between their adult selves and their childhood selves, as though the object allows a person to exist across his or her own lifetime. This really caught my attention because before even reading this book or this chapter, I would always say that whenever I smell cherry chapstick, it always reminds me of America, because the very first time I had smelled cherry chapstick was when I was in America, and that was the only time I think I had smelled cherry chapstick. Same thing with maple syrup and Crayola crayons and Crayola markers. The very first time I had smelled a scented marker, or even learned that scented markers exist, was in America. So when I think back to my past, and when I think about my experiences and my memories in America, I always think of these. I associate these smells with what America is like, which I don't think if you asked an American, hey, what does your country smell like, they would answer this. So I wanted to take a scientific look into how memory and olfaction is connected. So I found this TED piece. The original video was quite long. I've only cut it down to the points that I wanted to show. So let's have a watch.
It's the first sense you use when you're born. The very back of your nose is a region called the olfactory epithelium, a little patch of skin that's key to everything you smell. The olfactory epithelium has a layer of olfactory receptor cells, special neurons that sense smells, like the taste buds of your nose. When odor molecules hit the back of your nose, they get stuck in a layer of mucus covering the olfactory epithelium. As they dissolve, they bind to the olfactory receptor cells, which fire and send signals through the olfactory tract up to your brain. Your olfactory neurons are always fresh and ready for action. They're the only neuron in the body that gets replaced regularly, every 4 to 8 weeks. Once those neurons are triggered, the signal travels through a bundle called the olfactory tract to destinations all over your brain, making stops in the amygdala, the thalamus, and the neocortex. This is different from how sight and sound are processed. Each of those signals goes first to a relay center in the middle of the cerebral hemisphere, and then out to other regions of the brain. But smell, because it evolved before most of your other senses, takes a direct route to these different regions of the brain, where it can trigger your fight or flight response, help you recall memories, or make your mouth water. The inability to smell a scent is called anosmia, and there are about 100 known examples. And some people can't smell anything at all. This kind of full anosmia can have several causes. Some people are born without a sense of smell. Others lose it after an accident or during an illness. If the olfactory epithelium gets swollen or infected, it can hamper your sense of smell, something you might have experienced when you were sick. And not being able to smell anything can mess with your other senses too. Many people who can't smell at all also can't really taste the same way the rest of us do. It turns out that how something tastes is closely related to how it smells. As you chew your food, air is pushed up your nasal passage, carrying with it the smell of your food. Those scents hit your olfactory epithelium and tell your brain a lot about what you're eating.
I really like that video because it's very informative, but it simplifies it. It explains everything in layman's terms. TED Ed is very good at doing that. So let's take a deeper look into the science behind the connection between olfaction and memory. So there was a study done by Afif Akrabawi and Jun Chul Kim. And they found that they're neurobiologists from the University of Toronto, by the way. And they found that the information about space and time integrate within a region of the brain important for the sense of smell, yet poorly understood, known as the anterior olfaction nucleus, or AON for short. So this part of the brain, even though it's it's an integral part of how memory is stored, has been neglected, or is still being neglected when it comes to studying how memory is stored and retained. They mentioned what they call a what, when, where memory. And they use the example that when you smell a perfume from your past, it will remind you of the experience you had let's say a kiss that you might have had while wearing that perfume. So in this scenario, the perfume or the smell of the perfume, the scent is the object, and the memory is the kiss itself, the person you kissed, how the kiss was, where the kiss was, what you were wearing, etc., etc. A very important discovery that they made through their studies is that there is a neutral pathway between the AON and the hippocampus. The hippocampus, if you don't know, it's a very crucial part of your brain, and it plays a very important role in retaining memory and storing memory. And this part of the brain, the hippocampus, is what is involved in the Alzheimer's disease. Something very important they discovered during their studies is that they learned that if the communication, the neutral pathway between the hippocampus and the AON, if that connection is disrupted, then the memory loss that Alzheimer patients experience can be recreated. And so to test that out, they decided to experiment on mice. And what they learned, the results were that when the connection between the hippocampus and the AON remains intact, the mice will go and seek out newer smells. However, when the connection between the hippocampus and the AON was disrupted, the mice would go back to older smells that they had smelled, but they would smell it as if it was a new smell. You know, every time they would smell something that they had already smelled before, they would smell it as if it was the very first time they were smelling it. So what can be learned from this experience is that the object itself, in this case the smell, is present. However, what it represents, the memory that it represents, isn't. It's cloudy because this is about Alzheimer's patients. However, of course, if you don't have Alzheimer's, it can easily help you understand what it is that you're remembering. Again, going back to the what, where, when memory. So to wrap up this presentation, I would like you all to engage and ask you, which olfaction triggers your memory? So is there a particular smell that you really enjoy and it makes you think of something happy from your past? Or is there a bad smell that you don't like that makes you think of something awful from your past? Or what is a weird smell that universally is considered awful, but you like it because it's connected to a fond memory, or vice versa? I think that would be a really fun discussion. And that is all from me. Thank you very much for watching my presentation. These are the sources I used, and yeah, thank you. Bye-bye.